Imagine sitting in a cold lawyer's office, still grieving your dad, only to hear your own flesh and blood brother say your father was losing his mind, all for a payout. It's sickening. It's the ultimate betrayal by the people you are supposed to trust the most. Hey guys, I'm Hazel. Grab your coffee and get comfortable, because today's family drama is next level. We are talking about a calculated gold digger, a greedy sibling, and the absolute most satisfying financial karma I have ever seen. Today's story comes from a 28-year-old woman. Let's call her Sarah. Sarah was a total daddy's girl her entire life. They were incredibly close. That bond only grew stronger after her mum passed away when Sarah was just a teenager. Her older brother, Mark? He was a different story. Mark was the classic golden child who could do no wrong in his own eyes. But Mark was terrible with money. He constantly jumped from one failed business idea to the next, always expecting a bailout. He only ever called their dad when he needed his rent paid or his credit cards magically paid off. For years, it was mostly just Sarah and her dad. They built a really beautiful, quiet life together. Her dad was a highly intelligent man. He owned a very successful hardware supply business in their town. He worked hard his whole life and had a very comfortable retirement fund saved up. He was set for life, but he was also lonely. Sarah knew he missed having a partner to share his days with. Then, 3 years ago, everything changed. Her dad met a woman named Brenda at a local charity event. Brenda was 15 years younger than him. She wore too much perfume, designer clothes, and had a very loud personality. Almost immediately, Brenda started inserting herself into every single aspect of his life. It was textbook love bombing. Sarah tried her absolute best to be supportive. She wanted her dad to be happy, but Brenda was a walking red flag. Psychologically, Brenda started isolating him. She always had an excuse for why they couldn't attend family dinners with Sarah. She slowly pushed away his lifelong friends, claiming they were a bad influence or didn't treat her with enough respect. Then she started complaining about his house. The house Sarah grew up in. She said it was too old and outdated. But Sarah's dad was blinded by the attention. He thought he had found his second chance at true love. They got married after knowing each other for barely 8 months. It was a rushed, flashy wedding that Brenda planned entirely. Sarah smiled through the whole ceremony, hoping for the best but feeling a deep pit in her stomach. Mark, of course, loved Brenda. Brenda constantly complimented him and told him his terrible business ideas were actually pure genius. Fast forward to earlier this year. The unthinkable happens. Sarah's dad got sick. It was a sudden and highly aggressive illness. The doctors said they couldn't do much. Over a span of just 4 months, his physical health completely deteriorated. He was confined to his bed. It was absolutely heartbreaking for Sarah. She took a leave of absence from her job just to be by his side. Brenda, on the other hand, played the perfect grieving wife whenever guests or doctors were in the room. She would cry on cue, holding his hand and talking about how tragic it was to lose her soulmate. But privately, when it was just family, Sarah noticed Brenda was acting incredibly strange and distant. Brenda was constantly glued to her phone, texting aggressively and stepping outside to take hushed phone calls. Whenever Sarah asked about his medical bills or insurance, Brenda became extremely defensive and told her to mind her own business. Brenda also started hiding the Daily Mail. She would sprint to the mailbox before anyone else could get there. Sarah knew something was wrong, but her main focus was just spending those final precious days with her father. Sadly, her dad passed away in late October. Sarah's entire world was completely shattered. Brenda claimed she was simply too overwhelmed with grief to handle any of the actual funeral arrangements. So, Sarah handled everything. The church, the flowers, the burial. She did it all while mourning her best friend. At the funeral, Mark arrived late. He spent the entire reception sitting next to Brenda, whispering to her. Sarah thought it was weird that her brother was comforting the stepmom more than his own grieving sister. 2 weeks after the funeral, the family was summoned. It was time for the official reading of the will. Sarah, Mark, and Brenda all sat in the attorney's heavy mahogany office. The tension in the room was incredibly thick. Now, remember how smart Sarah's dad was? He was a businessman. He knew exactly who his family members really were. He left Mark a modest trust fund. But it was structured to pay out very slowly over 20 years. The dad knew if he gave Mark a lump sum, Mark would blow it all on a bad investment within months. He left Brenda the house they currently lived in, and a set monthly allowance to keep her comfortable. But he left the bulk of his entire estate, the hardware business, and his main savings accounts directly to Sarah. He named Sarah as the sole executor of the estate. He trusted her to handle his legacy perfectly. When the lawyer read that part out loud, Brenda absolutely lost her mind right there in the office. She stood up, her face red with rage. She started screaming that the lawyer had made a mistake. She yelled that she was his wife, his actual widow, and that she deserved every single penny of his liquid cash. Sarah just sat there in silence. She truly didn't care about the money. She just wanted her dad back. But Brenda stormed out of the office, slamming the door, threatening that this wasn't over, and she meant it. A whole month goes by. Sarah is just trying to heal and figure out how to run the business. Then there is a loud knock on her door. She is served with official legal papers. Brenda had hired a notoriously aggressive shark of a lawyer to officially contest the validity of the will. Sarah read through the lawsuit. Brenda's entire legal argument was absolutely disgusting and insulting. Brenda claimed that in his final months, Sarah's dad wasn't in his right mind due to his heavy medication. She formally claimed he suffered from severe cognitive decline and had no idea what he was signing when he updated the will, which was a total, blatant lie. His physical body was failing, but his mind was sharp. Until the very last day. Sarah called her lawyer, thinking this lawsuit would be an easy win. It was obviously just a desperate cash grab. But her lawyer sounded concerned on the phone. He told Sarah that Brenda actually had a secret weapon. Brenda had found a star witness, someone who was willing to testify under oath that the father was completely delusional. Someone willing to stand in front of a judge and swear the dad was unfit to sign legal documents. That star witness? It was Mark, her own flesh and blood brother. Sarah felt the blood drain from her face. She couldn't believe her own brother would stoop so low. Brenda had gone to Mark privately, right after the funeral, and struck a very dark, greedy deal with him. If Mark helped her legally void the current will, the estate would be split differently under the law. Brenda promised that if they won, she would split the massive cash savings with Mark directly, 50-50. Mark's deep-rooted greed completely won over his morals. He wanted a massive lump sum of cash right now. He abandoned his sister, betrayed his father's dying wishes, and tarnished his dad's memory, all to get rich quick. Sarah was completely devastated. The legal battle officially began, and it dragged on for agonizing months. It was draining her emotionally. She couldn't sleep. The legal fees were starting to pile up rapidly. Brenda's lawyer was ruthless. He filed motion after motion, trying to financially bleed Sarah dry, so she would just settle. It was starting to look really bad. Without hard proof of her dad's mental state, it was Mark's word against hers. It looked like Brenda and Mark were actually going to get away with stealing everything her dad worked for. Then came a rainy Sunday afternoon. Sarah was alone, cleaning out some boxes from her dad's old home office. She was packing up old tax returns when she found a heavy leather briefcase tucked way in the back of a closet. Inside was his old, chunky laptop. It was heavy and dusty. Brenda obviously hadn't thought to take it or look for it. Sarah plugged it into the wall. Surprisingly, it powered right up. The screen glowed to life, asking for a password. She tried his birthday. Incorrect. She tried her mother's birthday. Still incorrect. She even tried Mark's birthday. Nothing. Finally, she typed in the name of her childhood golden retriever. The screen flashed and the laptop unlocked. She opened his internet browser, honestly just looking for old family photos or personal documents he might have saved. But what she found was an absolute goldmine. A completely hidden digital trail that exposed everything. Her dad had a secondary, private email address, one that he never told Brenda about. Sarah started reading the emails. He had been secretly forwarding himself bank alerts for the last 6 months of his life. Alerts for massive, unexplained cash withdrawals, large transfers to offshore accounts Brenda had secretly opened in her own name. There were huge credit card charges for luxury handbags, spa treatments, and resort vacations he obviously never took. While he was literally sick in bed fighting for his life, Brenda was treating his bank account like an unlimited ATM. She was meticulously embezzling his money, moving it in small enough chunks to avoid triggering immediate fraud alerts. Sarah's hands were shaking as she scrolled. But that wasn't even the most explosive piece of evidence on the laptop. She found a drafted email sent directly from her dad to his estate lawyer, dated just 3 weeks before he passed. The email was written perfectly. The grammar was flawless. The logic was sharp, concise, and incredibly detailed. In the email, her dad explicitly stated that he caught Brenda stealing from him, detailing the exact amounts. He wrote that he knew his time was short, and he was confirming his final updates to the will to protect Sarah. He specifically noted that his mind was completely clear, and he was fully aware of Brenda's manipulation. It was the ultimate proof. His mind hadn't deteriorated at all. He knew exactly what Brenda was doing in the dark. He legally outsmarted her right before the end, setting up an ironclad will that she could never genuinely break. Sarah didn't text Mark. She didn't call Brenda to scream at her. She kept her mouth entirely shut. She printed every single email, every timestamp, every bank alert. She organized them chronologically into a massive, thick binder. First thing Monday morning, she drove straight to her lawyer's office and dropped the heavy binder right on his desk. Her lawyer read through the pages. A slow, predatory smile spread across his face. They had them dead to rights. The very next week, the court had ordered a mandatory mediation meeting to see if they could settle before trial. Sarah walked into the conference room. Brenda and Mark sat across the large glass table, looking incredibly smug and confident. Mark wouldn't even make eye contact with Sarah. He stared down at his phone, playing the part of the reluctant witness. Brenda was wearing a designer outfit, likely bought with stolen money, sipping sparkling water like she had already won. Brenda's lawyer stood up. He gave a long, dramatic speech, about how tragic it was that the father's mind had faded. He talked about how Sarah was just in denial about her father's dementia, and that Brenda was the rightful heir. Sarah's lawyer didn't interrupt. He let the man talk for a full 10 minutes, letting them dig their own graves. When he finally finished, Sarah's lawyer cleared his throat. He reached into his briefcase and pulled out the thick binder. He didn't say a word. He just slowly slid the heavy binder across the smooth glass table directly to Brenda's lawyer. Brenda's lawyer frowned, putting on his reading glasses. He opened the first page, then the second, then the third. The color completely drained from the man's face. He turned pale white. The room went dead silent. He looked at the printed emails, looked up at Brenda with absolute horror, and immediately closed the binder. Without a word to the room, he grabbed Brenda by the arm and demanded an immediate private recess with his client. They stepped out into the hallway. But the walls of the law office were incredibly thin. Through the drywall, Sarah and Mark could hear Brenda's lawyer absolutely screaming at her at the top of his lungs. He realized instantly that his client had committed massive financial fraud, lied to his face, and perjured herself in court filings. Lawyers do not like being lied to, especially when it implicates them in presenting fraudulent evidence to a judge. He stormed back into the room, packed his briefcase, and announced he was dropping Brenda as a client effective immediately. Brenda walked back in, looking completely panicked. The smug smile was entirely wiped off her face. The civil lawsuit to contest the will was instantly dropped that exact same afternoon. It was completely over. Sarah wasn't done. The civil case was just the beginning. Now it was time for the real consequences. Sarah's lawyer took that same thick binder of financial evidence and handed it directly over to the local police department's fraud unit. Brenda wasn't just losing the lawsuit. She was now under a massive criminal investigation for felony financial elder exploitation, because the amounts she stole crossed state lines and exceeded $50,000. It was a severe felony charge. The authorities immediately froze all of Brenda's bank accounts pending the criminal trial. She couldn't touch a single dime. She went from living a life of stolen luxury to begging friends for loan money just to hire a criminal defense attorney. But what about Mark? Mark thought he could just walk away, pretend he made a mistake, and still get his original trust fund. Mark was incredibly wrong. Remember that brilliant estate lawyer the dad used to draft the will? The dad had instructed the lawyer to include a very specific, ironclad legal paragraph known as a no-contest clause. A no-contest clause means that if any beneficiary tries to legally fight the will in court and loses, they forfeit everything. Because Mark signed a sworn affidavit supporting Brenda's fraudulent lawsuit, he legally triggered that exact clause. Mark lost his entire trust fund. The slow-paying safety net his father had built for him evaporated into thin air. Every single penny that was supposed to go to Mark defaulted right back into the main estate, controlled by Sarah. When Mark found out, he panicked. He tried calling Sarah's phone over 30 times in a single day. He left voicemails crying, begging for forgiveness, claiming Brenda had psychologically manipulated him into lying. He said he was broke, his rent was due, and he just needed a small advance on his inheritance to survive. Sarah listened to the voicemails once. She felt absolutely nothing. No pity, no guilt, just pure closure. She simply hung up the phone, blocked his number, and blocked him on every single social media platform. She didn't owe him an explanation. He had made his choice when he tried to drag their father's name through the mud. As for the hardware business, Sarah stepped up and took over as the official owner. She proved to be incredibly sharp, modernizing their inventory system and expanding their contracts with local construction companies. Her dad's loyal employees rallied around her, happy that the business stayed in the hands of someone who actually cared. Brenda eventually pled guilty to lesser fraud charges to avoid prison time, but she was ordered to pay massive restitution. She is currently working a minimum wage retail job, having a portion of every single paycheck garnished by the court. Mark had to move out of his luxury apartment. Last Sarah heard, he was sleeping on a friend's couch in another state. Sometimes, the best revenge isn't screaming or fighting. It's just staying quiet, gathering the evidence, and letting the trap snap shut. Sarah secured her future, protected her dad's legacy, and permanently removed two incredibly toxic people from her life. Honestly, the dad's foresight to document everything while he was sick is a masterclass in protecting your family. He knew his wife was a fraud, and he knew his son was weak. He played chess while they played checkers. It makes you wonder how many families get torn apart because people don't leave a clear, documented digital trail. If there is any lesson to take from this drama, it's that greed always makes people sloppy in the end. Brenda got too comfortable. She thought because he was physically weak, his mind was weak too. Huge mistake. And Mark? Mark traded a guaranteed comfortable future for a quick cash grab that didn't even exist. The absolute audacity to sit at a funeral and plot how to steal from your own sister is mind-blowing. I don't think anyone could ever forgive a sibling for doing something that deeply manipulative and cruel. Sarah handled it perfectly. Cold, calculated, and legally flawless. She let the paperwork do all the screaming for her. No dramatic confrontations, no reality TV screaming matches in the driveway. Just pure, unadulterated justice served on a silver platter. Now she gets to live peacefully, running a thriving business, completely unbothered by the chaos they tried to bring her. I love seeing karma work this efficiently. It doesn't always happen in real life, but when it does, it's beautiful. Imagine being Brenda's lawyer in that moment. Opening a binder and realizing your career is on the line because of a lie. That specific moment in the conference room must have felt better than winning the actual lottery for Sarah. To see the exact second their arrogant smirks melted into pure panic. That is core memory material right there. Financial abuse of the elderly is terrifyingly common. People like Brenda prey on loneliness and weaponize isolation. They alienate the victim from anyone who might protect them, taking total control of the narrative and the bank accounts. It's a chilling reminder to always check in on your older relatives, especially when a new partner enters the picture abruptly. Look for the subtle signs, changing the locks, firing old accountants, dodging questions about health insurance. It all adds up. Thankfully, Sarah's dad was sharp enough to recognize the game and leave the breadcrumbs for his daughter to find. That hidden email address was the ultimate wildcard. He knew Brenda was snooping on his main accounts. It's almost cinematic. A dying man leaving one final puzzle piece to ensure his true heir wins the war. And the no contest clause? Absolute perfection. Every single person with assets should ask their lawyer about adding one of those. It prevents greedy relatives from using drawn-out lawsuits to force a settlement. It forces them to gamble everything. Mark rolled the dice against his own sister and lost everything. I highly doubt he will ever financially recover from that. He will spend the rest of his life knowing he traded his father's love for absolutely nothing. I really hope Sarah is thriving right now. Taking over a business while grieving is an immense amount of pressure, but she proved she has her father's intelligence and resilience. The hardware store is definitely in the right hands. This story is exactly why I love reading these Reddit threads. You cannot write fiction better than this real-world drama. The betrayal, the secret evidence, the dramatic lawyer reveal. It's better than a primetime television legal drama. It really makes you reevaluate the people around you. Who would stand by you, and who would sell you out? Money changes people, or rather, it reveals exactly who they have been the entire time, hiding behind a mask. Brenda's mask slipped the second the will was read. The grieving widow act vanished, replaced by pure greed. And Mark's mask slipped when he realized he wasn't getting the instant gratification he felt entitled to. It's sad that Sarah essentially lost her brother too. But honestly, she is so much better off without that toxicity. You cannot heal in the same environment that broke you. Cutting Mark off was the healthiest decision she could make. She protected her peace. And in today's world, protecting your peace is the ultimate form of winning. So, the next time someone tries to drag you into their toxic drama, remember Sarah's strategy. Don't yell, don't argue, just collect the receipts, bide your time, and strike when they are feeling overly confident. Let them dig a hole so deep they can never climb out of it. Let them destroy their own credibility. Because the truth always leaves a paper trail. You just have to be patient enough to find it. I am still stunned by the sheer audacity of Brenda thinking she could outsmart a successful business owner. She vastly underestimated him, and she vastly underestimated Sarah. That arrogance was her ultimate downfall. Now she has a criminal record, ruined credit, and zero reputation. A textbook example of playing foolish games and losing in the end. I would pay good money to read the text messages between Brenda and Mark after everything fell apart. I'm sure they immediately turned on each other, blaming the other for the plan failing so spectacularly. There is no honor among thieves. The second the ship started sinking, they definitely tried to drown each other. It's a poetic ending to a very dark chapter in Sarah's life. The storm passed, and she is left standing strong. I want to know what you guys think about this insane situation. Have you ever seen greed tear a family apart like this? Do you think Mark deserves a second chance decades from now, or should he remain blocked for the rest of his life? Drop your thoughts in the comments down below. Make sure to subscribe for more wild stories, and I'll see you in the next one.